Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you are all keeping cool and hydrated in this balmy weather we're having here in the UK right now. I'm just popping on to talk about this book, Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. And this has been on my TBR pile for quite some time now, but I am so excited to be reading it. So today is the day. And I will read an excerpt from where I'm at right now, which is chapter 11. For 14 days there had been only dark waves and grey sea foam and biting salt spray, and then, as if it had been plucked from one of her mother's bedtime tales, Evangeline saw the snow-covered curves of the great gateway arch to the magnificent north. Made of granite with marbled blue veins, and as tall as a castle's keep, the arch's weathered columns were carved to look like mermaids, holding tridents that pierced through carvings of men, the way a sailor might spear a fish. The men's backs were bowed, and their hands stretched to hold out the sign forming the top of the enormous arch. Welcome to the magnificent north. Stories be here. It's even larger than I imagined, said Marisol. Her light brown hair was shining, and her delicate face was full of healthy colour. The weeks at sea had done her good. The first couple of days aboard the ship she'd been too nervous to leave her cabin, but each day she'd ventured out a little more, and today she huddled beside Evangeline at the railing. "Is this where we need to be quiet?" she whispered. Evangeline nodded with a smile, glad her stepsister was starting to believe in her northern stories the same way Evangeline did. During their journey, Evangeline had not been surprised to learn that Agnes never told Marisol any stories growing up, so Evangeline had shared some of her mother's tales, including her warnings about entering the north. Never speak a word as you go through the gateway arch. The ancient magic of the north cannot pass the borders, but it always tries. It collects around the gateway arch, and if you speak as you travel through, the magic will steal your voice and use your words to lure unsuspecting travellers into helping it escape to other parts of the world. It must have been a common myth, or everyone felt the same sense of gravitas that Angeline did, for the whole of the ship sailed under the arch in silence. On the other side the air was cool as ice, and full of clouds so low that Evangeline could taste them. "I wish we could sail faster," a sailor grumbled. "This part always gives me the collywobbles." The waves stopped lapping, and the nearby clouds drifted over the sun, shadowing their ship as it silently cut through the stretch of sea known as Vallow Row, graveyard for the first royal family of the north. The Vallow's ancient monuments were exactly as her mother had described them. Standing knee-deep in the blue-grey waters, the statues were nearly as tall as the arch, every inch of them carved to appear as if they were armour or finery, except for the heads, which were all missing. And yet, as her ship sailed past, Evangeline could still hear their voices, or perhaps they were voices stolen from those who had travelled through the arch before. "Free us," they rasped. "Restore us. Help us. We can." Evangeline didn't hear the rest of the plea as the ship reached the docks of Valafel, and everyone became busy disembarking. "Miss Fox, Miss Tourmaline?" asked a silver-haired woman in a sea-salt blue gown with a silver underskirt and a belt that held a number of tied-up scrolls in it. "I'm Frangelica." I'll be escorting you to your lodgings and ensuring Miss Fox makes it to her dinner this evening." Angelica's smile was warm and her way brisk as she urged the girls from the ship, but Evangeline could not bring herself to rush as she stepped onto the drizzly dock full of fishmongers, trading stalls and knobby barrels of oysters. She'd always loved living in the South. She loved the heat of the sun and the overbright colours everyone wore. But now the brilliant streets of Valenda seemed too lurid. Here, everything was mist-touched. It was all foggy greys, rainy blues, and deep purples, the exact colour of fresh plums. The burly men at the docks all looked as if they could step into a forest and fell a tree with one swing of an axe. They wore leather boots covered in heavy buckles, while the women wore thick woolen gowns with belts like Angelica's, which held everything from bottles of tonics to palm-sized crossbows. Just taking in the cool, crisp air made Evangeline stand a little straighter and breathe a little deeper. And Marisol, look! Tiny dragons! Oh my! Marisol went pale as a robust pop sounded, and a tiny pepper-black dragon, about the size of a chipmunk, shot out streams of red fire to sear a fish stick at a nearby stall. On the docks, the adorable little beasts appeared to be as common as squirrels. Almost every vendor had one. Marisol was clearly not fond of the small winged creatures, but Evangeline was delighted to spy tiny blue dragons sitting on shoulders and leathery brown ones perched on carts. The miniature beasts roasted apples and meats, blew glass baubles, and heated earthen mugs of drinking chocolate. It all was as charming as her mother had said. Evangeline had to look down at the damp cobbles to make sure her feet were still on the ground and that she hadn't taken flight, for parts of her were soaring. Stepping into the north didn't just feel like the start of something, it felt like the start of everything. Beyond the docks, spires of hearty wood shops grew upwards instead of outward. Each glorious level had storybook quaint storefronts, all connected by fog-laced footbridges that crisscrossed above Evangeline's head in a maze of wonderful patterns. The north made her think of her mother, of course, but with a pang she realised it was also somewhere she would have loved to have explored with her father. The few shops she could see inside looked exactly like the sorts of places he might have found all kinds of new oddities for his shop. "Get your daily rumour," cried a girl with a satchel full of rolled-up papers. "Perfect if you're placing bets on who the prince will propose to, or if you want to know who your competition is." "We should buy one," Marisol said, eyeing the papers with curiosity. Given Marisol's dislike of scandal sheets, her interest was not what Evangeline would have expected, but it was just the kind of an adventurous spirit that she'd hoped the North would bring out in her stepsister. Evangeline reached into her coin purse. Their currency was different, but the Empress had generously supplied her with northern pocket money. "How much?" "Just half a mark," said the paper girl. "Wait." The girl's brows jumped as she took a real look at Evangeline. "It's you! And you really do have pink hair." The girl shoved a mist-damp paper in Evangeline's hands and winked. "It's on me. I placed a bet that Prince Apollo chooses you over the others." Evangeline didn't know how to respond, other than insisting on paying the girl twice as much as the paper cost.